Hey everyone, wanted to do a video on the geometry of Yakut blades um, and talk about some of the things I've seen from the knives that I've myself collected so far and tried out, and compare some of the knives from Yakut masters to some of the knives I have from folks that make Yakut type knives. Um, So the biggest difference I wanted to talk about is the geometry of the spine here. If you look at how the blade comes together and the tip on blades actually made in Yakutia, you have more traditional, I would say, more standard tip where you have narrowing to the point on both sides, and this one has a little more of the lens that people come to expect. But this is, it's a thin one, so it's a little harder to see, but this is pretty common on modern Yakut blades, where the blade actually comes together from both sides, even though it could be pretty asymmetric. And yes, all of them have basically flat one side, although that's not even true if you've seen some of my other videos. Some people actually convex a little bit on the fuller side as well, but typically you have the flat side on the fuller side, whether it's hammered or one of the clean I'll show in a second, or like this one, I guess. But the other side, people have been all cut up in the making that very convex, very much of a well-defined lens, as opposed to a lot of the knives that people actually make in Siberia these days. They are often flat on this side or very slightly convex, kind of like this one, where you will, it's hard to see here, but the best way to do it actually is to take a piece of paper and just stick it in and see what what trace it leaves. But they're much narrower in the profile and much closer to flat on the so-called convex lens side. Even this one, maybe it's a little easier to see, has a more defined lens maybe than the other one you saw here. Actually has a secondary micro edge on the fuller side here. But anyway, what I wanted to show you was, this is kind of the typical knife that's made in Russia and other places in the world now, copying Yakut knives, and it's not as crazy as some of the ones I've seen on the spine, but still, this is a good example because it has a very well-defined convex lens on this side. Especially the mirror polish makes it very easy to see. So this is kind of the stylized Yakut that you see coming out of other makers and being adopted across the world now. This one actually has some of the tapering on the tip here from both sides, I guess, but mostly, and some of the knives I've seen, a lot of the knives I've seen actually have it more extreme than this. So this side is flat, right? This side is very convex, and usually when you look at the spine, you will see flat and then kind of coming down to the tip. So this one actually has a defined tip despite that, but still, the thing is that when it's so convex, and this, don't get me wrong, this is an excellent knife. Execution of this one is very clean. It feels very nice and cuts really well, but what happens is it's really, when you cut, the lens rolls, right? So one of the advantages of the Yakut blade is that it doesn't get stuck in the wood when you cut, and it comes back out, unlike an aggressive Scandi grind, for example, like this one, where it bites in and kind of wants to stay there. But that said, this guy is not nearly as universal as a knife like this, which is, you know, it still doesn't really, because of the asymmetry in the geometry, it's not going to get stuck in the wood the same way that this candy grind goes in from both sides. But it's a lot more, you know, versatile in terms of using it for other purposes. Here's one I have that's made by a Russian guy who lived in Yakutia for a while and actually makes very authentic knives. As again, you can see more triangular, more standard right tip. Again, his blades are a lot closer to flat grind on this side than this very convex lens type of grind. And he makes these clean fullers as well. So compare that. Again, here's another one I have. These guys are in Russia, but they do collaborate with folks in Yakutia and learn from them. They actually are getting closer and closer to the current kind of standard knives that are made there. But here's one I got from them. Again, this one you can see comes the spine and the tapering looks more normal, right? And this side actually asked for it to be flat. They can make it convex for people who are really into it, more like this guy, right? But you can also get it flat, which is actually, you know, a very versatile blade because it has enough of that asymmetry that you still get the slicing action, but it also is a much better kind of vertical slicer, you know, for using it as a kitchen knife, for example, or something. Yeah, so anyway, and also has that long, narrow fuller on the top that is more traditional, actually, than the bigger ones. It depends what part of the Yakutia you come from, I guess, because I heard these guys are sort of like the central area where they make very big hammered all over the blade fullers. These are more kind of in between modern ones, right? And this is actually the more traditional style, I think. And the last one I wanted to show you guys, this is one of my favorite blades I recently got. This one is made by a blacksmith, a village blacksmith in Yakutia. Very tough, very practical knife. Has more of one-sided tapering on this side than others. It's kind of a combination of a lot of things. Has a very thick spine, so a very tough blade. He tests them by, you know, standing up on them and jumping up and down and stuff. But still, you can see the tip is very well defined here. Sorry, hard to focus on it. And a pretty narrow tip, even though you can, you know, this tip is very tough. You can stick it into hard pieces of wood and whatnot, and it's not gonna break or bend. But yeah, he makes them a little more convex, and still, even if, you know, it's really hard to show on the video, but even looking at these two guys side by side, this guy, even though it's a thicker blade overall, it doesn't have nearly the amount of curvature that a lot of people put on their Yakuts, thinking that that's kind of the standard. So still, it does roll out of the wood if you need it to, but this is a very versatile blade, right, and a better slicer because of that narrower, flatter geometry. More suited for a lot of different tasks other than just doing this slice in, slice out. Okay, well, that's kind of what I wanted to show. Take a look at my other videos, follow me on Instagram, and there's a lot more information out there. Thank you.